Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Thank you for being here. I am going to be talking to you today about the military aid news, and there's quite a bit of it, and some of it might even be emerging as I talk to you because there's presently a Ramstein. I think it's a virtual meeting that they're having, the Ukraine Defence Contact Group, led now by the British, and I think maybe the British and the Germans together. There is American presence there, but I don't think it's Pete Hegseth. I think it's Whitaker, a guy. I'll talk about him in a second. He's their ambassador to the UN. Is that right? Anyway, welcome to the video. My throat is a little bit hoarse today. I'm not, I've caught tonsillitis possibly, or I don't know, something throaty off my boys. End of term. Goodness me, we're one day away now from having my twins at home 24/7. Do you know what? I love my boys, but school's great. Just stay there, please. Just stay at school for at least half the day. So anyway, that's going to be happening. That's the summer holidays now starting. I'm shooting off on holiday at some point relatively soon. OPSEC, we're going to Timbuktu, I think it is. Anyway, somewhere in the Sahel region of Africa for a bit of, we're going to try and have a working holiday fighting Wagner in the desert. So that's where we're going. Anyway, good to have you all on board. Is there anything I need to do to sort of bit of housekeeping stuff? Well, for some reason, over the course of my channel here, and I guess it's because I so often refer to Andrew Perpetua in kind of mapping and losses sort of context. So many people call me Andrew on the live threads, on the not live threads, on the YouTube video threads. Just for the record, I don't really give a damn. But just to remind people, you know, for the sake of accuracy, my name is not Andrew. But if you want to call me Andrew, I really don't care. So anyway, as all of you know, I'm legend of the multiverse. That's the only thing I answer to, clearly. Right, we are going to talk about military aid. We're going to be talking about Ramstein. Let's get up my data and all of my nuggets. Here we go. It's over there. Happy days. I hope you are all well in the live stream. Thank you for being on board. We are going to start with Ramstein. The next Ukraine Defense Contact Group meeting is today, expected to include the US Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, although I don't think it is, headed by UK and Germany, as mentioned. So I think it is, it's the ambassador to NATO. I knew it wasn't the UN ambassador. Representatives from 52 countries are taking part. The US is represented by ambassador to NATO. Fun fact, he was known, he was a bit controversial in Trump 1.0. I think before he took up a position in Trump 1.0, he was advocating for the big dick toilet. Sorry to be so coarse, but that's literally what he was trying to sell, which is a toilet specifically designed for men who are particularly well endowed, and so that there isn't issues when sitting on a toilet. Anyway, that's the sort of person that they like to put in position of ambassador to NATO. Excellent stuff. Anyway, that's Matthew Whitaker for you. He is representing the US in Ramstein. One of the things that has come out of Ramstein is this. UK Defence Secretary John Healey will urge allies to launch a 50-day drive, the 50-day push, to arm Ukraine at the meeting, backing Trump's threat of tariffs if Russia refuses to a ceasefire by September the 2nd. So it's good that there's an actual date for that 50-day pause, I guess, of pressure from the US. But in that time, it's incumbent, so John Healey would be saying, on supporters, allies of Ukraine to keep up the pressure. So Healey, 50-day deadline needed to force Putin to negotiate. Defense Secretary expected to urge that West should again boost its military support for Ukraine. So this is the Daily Telegraph. I'm just going to pop into this article a little bit. He's arguing that the West should boost its military support to bring Putin to the negotiating table within that 50-day time frame. 50 days on from the US president's announcement that he would sell top-of-the-line weapons to NATO. More on that in a second. Germany playing a big part in that. He says that the UK will, quote, play our full part in its success to bolster Ukraine's immediate fight. Alongside this, the US has started the clock on a 50-day deadline for Putin to agree to peace or face crippling economic sanctions. As members of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, we need to step up in turn with a 50-day drive to arm Ukraine on the battlefield and force Putin to the negotiating table. What else is there to mention here? Mr. Healy's comments come as MOD's confirmed the UK has sent $150 million worth of air defense missiles and artillery rounds to Ukraine in the past 2 months. Deliveries are part of the commitment to spend $700 million on air defense and artillery ammunition for Ukraine this year, alongside other funding to provide more of the drones that have become key weapons in the war with Russia. So America has given more than any other G7 country, says this particular infographic, and that's over the course of the war. Of course, that stopped abruptly in January 2025. UK is next in line, then Germany, but that's from the Kiel Institute. This is only half the picture, because I don't think that includes EU aid. And if you add EU aid on, Germany is providing somewhere between a quarter and a third of EU aid, same with France, in terms of the funding for the EU. So actually Germany skips past the UK, and France is much more comparable, or gets closer at least. So Italy as well is pushed up, but Italy are seen as one of these nations that really haven't done enough to help Ukraine. There is quite a proportion of the population that is more sympathetic to Russia's cause. I think there's been an active communist party in Italy for some time, and so and also on the right in Italy, such as La Liga and Forza Italia, they seem to be pro-Russia, as we see right across Europe. The far right seem to be pro-Russia, and the far left are sympathetic to old Soviet Union kind of thinking, and that's why you get the SPD in Germany having a history of supporting Russia more. So there are issues on both extremes. So I guess it's more sensible to advocate, if you're going to be obsessed with Ukraine, as I am, we kind of advocate for the center these days. You know, center left, center right, and center seem to be the sensible people with regard to international geopolitics, and then your ideals at the extremes are more likely to be pro-Russian, or at least anti-Ukrainian. UK has delivered 50,000 drones to Ukraine in the last 6 months, with another 20,000 coming from the coalition of nations led by Britain and Latvia. That's a capability coalition for drones. Monday's UDCG today is expected to see further commitments, with Germany and UK agreeing to procure more air defense missiles using 170 million euros of funding from Berlin. We're going to talk about that in a little while. Okay, so moving on. In fact, we're going to talk about that pretty much now. So German aid to Ukraine has done not here. We are going to come to his useful thread in a second, summarizing. But before that, he said the British Ministry of Defence just announced that Germany will provide more than 170 million euros in funding, which the UK will use to procure air defence ammunition via the UK-led International Fund for Ukraine for delivery in the coming months. So one thing the UK does is we're in charge of a fund. I forget what the fund is exactly called, but it's International Fund is what German aid has called it. And that fund is a bit like the Czech initiative, but it's for other things, where the Czechs, for example, get given funding by all sorts of countries who want to support Czechia in providing artillery ammunition to Ukraine. The UK is running another fund to provide, I think, a variety of stuff. So people, rather than, say, Belgium wanted to help Ukraine, rather than sort out stuff themselves and procure bits of equipment and send it out, and get involved with all the logistics, which then becomes quite complex, it's kind of easier to say, here, UK, you're providing, you're running this fund and sorting out the logistics. Here's 140 million spondulis, right? So that's how that can work. Anyway, German aid says they also announced that at today's meeting, the UK and Germany will announce a new agreement to partner in providing critical air defense ammunition to Ukraine. I'll listen to the UDCG opening remarks, and hopefully they mention some details there, which I can provide you with later on, which he does do. We're going to return to that. But in the meantime, there have been lots of claims concerning these Patriots that allies are going to be subsidizing or buying on behalf of Ukraine from the United States. The United States, their aid package isn't indeed an aid package, it's just a sales receipt. The German government will purchase 2 Patriot complexes and missiles for them for 5 billion euros for Ukraine. This is unthinkable. We will not support this. Now, that's Alice Weidel, the leader of AfD. So in Germany, the far right political party called AfD, actually in some places seen as a terrorist organization, they have said that they are dead against that expenditure from the Germans for Ukrainian weaponry. That's thought to be to the tune of 5 billion euros. Then we heard that the Patriot system Germany promised to send to Ukraine will only be ready in 6 to 8 months. That's the Bild reporting, citing a German government source. Originally, the plan was for the US to supply air defense while Germany financed replenishment. But Trump declared the US military won't give up a single unit. So then we're thinking a couple of Patriots, you know, surely they need more than just a couple. We heard 17 from the president, but of course, Trump, I don't think, knew really what he was talking about. No disrespect. And that would have been 17 components of various air defense systems, but 17 would probably be more than 2 batteries, probably about 3 batteries. But then we hear today, but I've only heard this from Military News UA and Max 25, so take this with a massive pinch of salt, but this could almost be a sort of breaking news piece. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius says, apparently, looks like a paraphrase, Germany will provide additional air defense systems and the necessary ammunition. In addition, during my trip to Washington last week, I agreed with Pete Hegseth that Germany will join in providing 5 urgently needed Patriot systems as soon as possible. So they will join together to provide 5 systems. Now, to be honest, that's kind of the rhetoric we heard ages ago when I think Marco Rubio was at a NATO meeting last year. And no, not last year. It wouldn't have been last year. It would have been since he became Secretary of State. But there was this call for 5 systems to be provided, and they needed to come from somewhere. Rubio said he would do his best to try and find them. It could be part of that. This suddenly seems like the 2 to 3 Patriot systems that they were talking about, involving maybe 17 components, seems to have turned into 5 systems, but I haven't seen that claim in many places. So just hold your horses on that one. Here's a thread that German aid said he was talking about. As mentioned, I watched the opening remarks in today's meeting. There was some interesting points mentioned, which I have summarized for you. Here it is in the thread. So the 170 million euros Germany will provide for air defense ammunition will most likely be used for critical air defense missiles, per the statement of the British Minister of Defense. Likely to be, I don't know, obviously Patriot interceptors are going to be super useful, but I don't know if they're going to be separated out. NASAMS, that's a system that they use a lot of. Then Germany obviously provides a lot of IRIS-T munitions, but then there might also be sort of ASRAM, air-to-air missiles that are used in ground setups like the ones that the UK has provided on a Super Cat base called the Rapid. No, it's not the Rapid Ranger. That is called the Raven, and so on and so forth. So lots of options for what those missiles could be. Anyway, per the statement of the German Minister of Defense, it sounds like the details of the Patriot deliveries and procurements, etc., are to be worked out in the coming days. Next to the participation of Norway, likely funding the Patriot missiles from the Bundeswehr stocks. So Norway paying Germany for Germany to move some of their own stocks of Patriot missiles to Ukraine, and Belgium with 140 million euro contribution in funding and the provision of an A400M plane for transporting US-made equipment to Ukraine. Denmark and Sweden also already have joined with the German Enduring Action on Air Defense Initiative. So that's where, like I mentioned, you had the Czech initiative, and the UK have their own funding initiative for other equipment. The Germans, I think when it was around that time that they wanted to fight Patriots, actually, wasn't it? Germans said, right, we're going to start this whole initiative up. And it was first called the IAF, It's now called the EAAD, the Enduring Action on Air Defense Initiative. And they were hoping to get loads of money to pay for those systems, but not enough money came. And in the end, Germany gave up some of their kit. I think the Dutch gave up some components, but no one else really. The Dutch wanted a number of nations to contribute lots of components of Patriot systems to make up a whole system, and then it was just the Dutch in the end that gave their pieces. So that went out to Ukraine anyway, but it didn't quite go as far as they wanted. But now Denmark and Sweden are contributing to that initiative. Better late than never, I guess, for the Germans there. According to Pistorius, there are already indications that Germany can significantly top last year's success, which would mean to provide a lot more than the 1 billion euros worth of air defense related equipment. Germany will provide 220,000 rounds of Gepard ammunition to Ukraine at short notice, most likely referring to the 226,000 rounds of HEIT ammunition, which are already contracted. And more precisely, we are talking about already ongoing deliveries scheduled to last at least until the end of 2026. Pistorius once again confirmed that what was already officially confirmed some days ago, that Germany is financing the production, and this is super important, of Ukrainian-made long-range one-way attack drones. The first systems, the AN-196 Liutyi long-range OWA drones, financed by Germany, are to be handed over to the AFU in the coming days. Additional investments and a close technical cooperation between the German and Ukrainian defense industries are planned. We know that Germany will also finance Interceptor drones. Right, there have been lots of people talking about this funding. Christian Freuding, the German Major General, said, we are going to be providing the high three-digit number of whatever it is that we're providing. Some people were hoping, I was hoping, that these would be cruise missiles or ballistic missiles or something similar. Maybe if you're not going to provide the Taurus to Ukraine directly, then you could help fund some equivalent. But it looks like it is just going to be the Liutyi drone. Now, that is still super useful, but it isn't anything new, and I wonder on the success of these at the moment. I have a feeling they are relatively easy to shoot down, and the Russians will have. Oops, no, I didn't mean to do that. The Russians will have adapted to these drones, so that's what it looks like. The big, fairly decent sized drone with that twin tail at the back. That I don't know if there's a better view that you can see. Yeah, there it is. Sort of goes upwards to the back like that. Anyway, that is the Liutyi, and the Germans are providing the funding for an awful lot of them. Now, if you're talking about high triple-digit number, then let's say 800 of those. Now, the question is that a case of 800 getting made and given to Ukraine all in a fairly short time period, or is that over, say, a year? So they can use a certain amount of data, because it would be super useful if Ukraine had, like, I was talking, and I've done a number of videos the last 24 hours about the Yelabuga drone manufacturing facility at 1,200 kilometers from Ukraine's borders. Liutyi should be able to reach that distance. I think the range, if we look at the operating range here, 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers, right? So it should be able to reach Yelabuga, and I think they have already reached Yelabuga, right? So we know that's within the realms of possibility. And if Germany provides a really decent number of these, and maybe 200 could be sent at Yelabuga all at once, that's what I would absolutely love to see. I'd love to see that place go up in smoke. Right, German drone manufacturer Stark is testing its new Virtus loitering munition in Ukraine. The drone is being tested to a range of 40 kilometers with the use of a signal repeater drone. The drone itself carries a 5-kilogram high explosive, fragmentation cumulative warhead, manufactured in Ukraine, so it's a co-production, loiters at 120 kilometers per hour, and reaches a terminal velocity of 250 kilometers an hour. That's pretty good. What you want is a very fast terminal phase that makes it harder to shoot down the closer it gets to the target. So you can fly that thing pretty high up in the sky, out of range of maybe a fair number of guns and whatnot, and then get near your target and do a terminal dive very quickly. That's what the Shahed drones are doing at the moment, avoiding air defenses and then having a very steep and quick terminal phase diving down onto the Ukrainians. Okay. We are ready to expand joint defense production with France, says Zelensky. There is a decision by French companies to start manufacturing drones in Ukraine. We've heard that Renault, the French car company, is going to be involved in that. We also talked about sanctions against Russia and negotiations on accession to the EU, said Zelensky after meeting with Jean-Noël Barrot, the French foreign minister, who I think is doing a pretty damn good job with regard to very robust rhetoric on Ukraine, in support of Ukraine and against Russia. Yeah, so people in Bruce Ferry here in the thread talking about fund Ukraine's long Neptune and Hrim 2. So the Hrim 2 is a ballistic missile, as far as I can work out. Long Neptune is a cruise missile, and they need to be producing a lot of these. And we're going to return to that in a second, Bruce, because Zelensky's made some claims about Ukrainian manufactured missiles over the last 48 hours, and we're going to dip into that. So fingers crossed you're going to see something within a week. That's possibly the news. Right, the Czech initiative is a civic initiative, not the government-led artillery ammunition initiative. This is a gift for Putin initiative that has raised 2.4 million euros for howitzers for the Ukrainian armed forces. So now that money raised will be able to purchase 6 new D30 howitzers. Now, I've talked to you about D30 being very old howitzers that the Russians are using. And the Russians are using old howitzers that were made from the 1960s onwards. But actually, the D30 is still made around the world by, I don't know who makes them, but they are, like the wiki page here says, they are manufactured from 1960 to present days, designed in the 50s. These are old bits of kit, but a howitzer is a howitzer. Like, yeah, you can have a few bells and whistles maybe, but a basic howitzer that is going to fire kind of your fairly short to medium range. This fires what, 15 to 22 kilometers. So it's not the longest range. It's not your 40-kilometer range of a decent SPG or something, but that's all right. It's kind of what you need. Is your bog standard artillery piece. There isn't too much that can be massively improved on that, I'm guessing, over the decades. So these are the reason why they still make them, I presume, is because, as it says here, the D30 is noted for simplicity of maintenance by its users. Reputedly, there are no special tools and all jobs can be done with a wrench and a large hammer. However, like any other gun, routine maintenance is essential. The Western troops in Afghanistan have reported Afghan-operated D30s having problems with shells sticking in the barrel due to lack of cleaning. So there you go. It is still made around the world, evidently, because the Czechs are funding 6, what I presume are new ones. I don't know if they're brand new, manufactured from brand new, but it says new howitzers here. Anyway, good news. The Ukrainians could do with everything that they can be given, for sure. Now, good news on the tank front, because one thing the Ukrainians lack is their own indigenous manufacturing of infantry fighting vehicles and tanks. These larger bits of mechanized equipment are not manufactured in Ukraine, although the Rheinmetall have been wanting to produce the Lynx infantry fighting vehicle that is also produced, I think, in Hungary at the moment, in Ukraine, but I don't think they've had success setting that up as of yet. So the Ukrainians need replacement tanks. They were getting a lot of tanks earlier on in the war. T-72s are being refurbished, like loads of old Soviet kit that people could find from Eastern Europe and elsewhere, getting them to Ukraine. And then the British were the first to provide modern main battle tanks with the Challenger 2, and then that allowed 31 Abrams tanks, and then a whole bunch of Leopard 2s as well. Then we've seen Leopard 1s more recently, and after the Leopard 1s, not really anything else has come. So it was really good to hear that the Australians were supplying one of their some of their Abrams tanks, the M1A1. So these are the older variety of Abrams tanks, 49 of them in total. 19 have apparently arrived somewhere in Ukraine. The location is undisclosed. That's really good news. We understand that they've reorganized the way that they are operating their units. So they have like a core structure now, but also that the mechanized, the tank units are smaller because tanks are less useful at the moment with the prevalence of drones. So that they're not loading so many into larger mechanized, I think, units. Anyway, the first Australian Abrams have reached after a 9-month wait. It was a long time in waiting because I think the Americans have put a stall on these going. Permission needed to come from the US. Tanks were promised to Kyiv in October 2024, but delivery was reportedly delayed due to resistance from the US. The remaining tanks will arrive in the coming months. So really, mate, you know it's coming. You know it's cultural appropriation time. So most of the M1A1s tanks pledged by Australia have already been delivered to Ukraine, according to the Australian Defence Ministry. The final batch will arrive in the coming months, completing the total of 49 tanks. Struth. Bloody good. It's those Americans, those Yanks with the flaming hoons, just not allowing them to go sooner. Anyway, the Albanese government continues its steadfast support for Ukraine with a transfer of the first tranche of Australian gifted M1A1 Abrams tanks to the armed forces of Ukraine. And Benny Pie in my WhatsApp has just sent me the message, Struth. So he's listening. That's good. Anyway, good news there. That's what we want to hear. What else? Support package valued at approximately $245 million is part of a $1.5 billion assistance Australia has committed to Ukraine since the start of the conflict, say the Australians. In August, Australia will deploy a Royal Australian Air Force E-7A Wedgetail aircraft to Europe to help protect a vital international gateway for assistance to Ukraine. So excellent stuff. They're also helping to train personnel under Operation Kudu. I presume that's also Operation Interflex from the UK, because I think Aussies are involved in that. But anyway, thank you, Australia. Really, really bloody kind. Belgian. I'm not doing a Belgian accent. I'm not doing it. Sorry, it's just inappropriate. It's just inappropriate to take take these countries and attempt to do an accent like that. I just wouldn't do it. I'm not the sort of person that would do accents, poor accents of other countries. I just wouldn't do it. Belgium arms manufacturer FN Herstel has, according to a Belgian news source, reached an agreement with a US-based RTX, formerly Raytheon, to localize the production of some parts of the final assembly of the AMRAAM anti-air missile in Belgium. This is what we need. So if the US is putting a stop on sales of equipment from the US to Ukraine or to allies to send to Ukraine, then localize the manufacture in Europe. And then I presume you don't have to go to the US to ask for permission there. Although I may be wrong. So no, John P, don't make me do it. Do not make me do that. Just I'll get in all sorts of trouble. So this deal is part of a larger procurement strategy that calls for the procurement of up to 9 Nazans fire units, also referred to as batteries, for the Belgian military, and 1 for Luxembourg in collaboration with the Netherlands. So hopefully all of this kind of helps the localization of manufacturing of US equipment in Europe as a way round the unreliability of Trump affecting foreign military sales. I think will essentially help Ukraine. It's basically where I'm going with this. Now, I love this. What you're going to see now, see this in a second. So a drone or a submarine, a student has just built a drone that flies through the air and swims underwater. And it actually works. As part of his bachelor's project, Andrei Kopachi created a 3D printed hybrid drone with a variable pitch propellers, meaning the blades shift mid-flight to adapt between air and water. Just a laptop, a printer, and a smart idea. The drone is fully custom coded and transitions seamlessly between flying and swimming. We're entering a new era where curious students can prototype what once took massive funding and R&D efforts. Now, I don't know what the function of this would be, like how you would apply it usefully in, say, a military context or any context really. But it's pretty amazing that this bad boy can go underwater. It can also move underwater. It's not that it can just survive underwater and then take off again, but it can actually maneuver underwater to do something underwatery. I guess that is going to be useful. Say you need to go and plant something on an oil rig on its, I don't know, maybe a military context. You could plant some kind of mine on something, a boat. You could use a drone to do that. And this is, I guess, a new future. Anyway, there you go. I thought you might want to see that. Yeah, you could certainly use in the river systems around the Dnipro River Delta. Pretty cool. I don't know if John P's spoken to this guy. I love it. Seeing and speaking with that guy made my day. I think he was pleased too. I'm not sure if he's talking about that video, but interesting. Okay, so now we're going over to Ave Europa here, who says, and this came from last week. This isn't from today, yesterday. This was on the 14th, I think. German Defense Minister Pistorius, when asked if German soldiers would kill Russian soldiers in case of an attack in the Baltics, said yes, that's their job. We love this new Germany, says the Europa. Of course, he's from the last government as well, but he's carried over into the present coalition. German troops are ready to kill Russian soldiers in the event of a Russian attack on a NATO country. It's their job, the country's defense minister Pistorius said. Now, that's absolutely right. I mean, right, as in, like, that is correct. It shouldn't need to be said. You know, that's the point of Article 5, right? That's what, if they were attacked by Russia, that's what they'd be called to do. But it's kind of nice to hear an explicit validation of Article 5 from these different nations, in this case, Germany. Okay, so what else do we have before we get on to what Ukraine is doing? Right, okay. I haven't listened to this whole 16 minutes, but I would like to. So I did give you a synopsis of some of the things Robert Brovdi said. So this is a Land Euro 2025, which is like a land forces conference in Wiesbaden in Germany. And Robert Brovdi Magyar, and one of his blokies had quite a lot to say. They said, look, we are responsible, the unmanned systems forces, for 2% of the personnel in the armed forces, and yet we are responsible for 1 in 3 materiel pieces destroyed and 1 in 3 casualties on the front, in the war. Like, that's how important these guys are. They are massively important. Now, I love that here, Magyar's Birds. And by the way, if you are on Twitter, follow the account 414 Magyar's Birds. It's well worth it. Robert Magyar Brovdi delivered hard truths about the war to NATO generals at Land Euro 2025. So just to remind you the key points. No tank in the world can withstand a $400 drone. What will NATO do if Shahids fly over Europe? Your doctrines need an urgent review. Unmanned systems forces, 2% of the army, but eliminate 1/3 of enemy troops and 1/3 of the equipment. We see no end to the war, not tomorrow, not this year. Wow. 4 of our drone crews could destroy your NATO base in 15 minutes from 10 kilometers away. Wow. Ukraine is building a drone wall taller than the Great Wall of China. Don't know what he means by that, but that sounds interesting. The Ukrainian experience must be integrated into Europe's security systems, 100%. So an awful lot said there. And one either bot, troll, or just Egypt says, good Lord, these people, speaking of Magyar's Birds, hey, Ukrainian, you are still losing territory to infantry. Drones are only useful because neither side has competent air force. To which I just love this. Magyar's Bird has time to respond to a bot or a troll or whatever. Hey, Yangtze strategist, try holding back one of the world's largest armies with your hands tied behind your back. No long-range strikes, no air superiority, no green light for hitting military targets inside Russia. And still, we grind them down. And the PDARs take 0 region value cities since the full-scale invasion. Show me one other country that can manage this. I'll wait. SOFA experts, MTF. And I love that. It's just absolutely brilliant. Someone said, look, it's a bot account. And Magyar's Bird say, I have time today. I've got time. I'm willing to engage in this bot account, but I love it. So yeah, well worth following them. But it's some interesting an interesting synopsis of what they're doing and what they're achieving, and actually kind of what Europe needs to do as well. Right, we're going to go on to Ukrainian stuff now, but sorry, you're going to get a bit more of me first, because I'm going to go and see what's going on in the live chat. So what do we have? Thank you, Petra Olsen. Petra, come to join the ATP here. Thank you for all you do for Ukraine. Thank you for being a part of this, Petra. And thanks for the Swedish love there. Awesome source. Thank you very much to BME. A little towards some earplugs when the kids are off, or a tipple. Thank you. Do you know so thank you, BME. I've just ordered a tipple from the little whiskey shop, Mark, with whom I went to Ukraine. So there was a group of 7 of us that went, Jonathan Fink and a bunch of guys, and Yaroslava as well. We drove 3 vehicles to Ukraine, and Mark was with us. He has a little whiskey shop and sells Ukrainian wine and Ukrainian vodka as well. And you can, I think, get you can get that book from him. I'm not sure if you can. There's a book there. But anyway, the guy that wrote that book, it's something to do with Dima, and you can get Dima's vodka. So little whiskey shop. If you're based in the UK, Mark can help you out there. But anyway, thank you guys. Right, back to the live threads. What else do we have? Right, we'll crack on then. I've got I haven't got enough brains. I need 2 brains and another set of eyes to just look at these threads, so I can pick something out. I should have seen if JR was about, but I was a little bit preoccupied. Okay, thank you very much, guys, for having an active live thread. Thanks to Haji, really appreciate the gifting the ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thank you so much. Okay, just someone did say something. Right, I don't know what Thomas Patton's talking about. One thing noticed over the last 2 nights, much shallower, longer final dives on drones. I'm doing a lot of thinking at the moment, and not particularly just I'm using Thomas Patton to spur me into talking about this. A lot of thinking at the moment about what the Ukrainian drone situation is with their strikes into Russian territory at the moment, because I think they've not achieved a great deal in terms of, there seems to be very little evidence of things getting blown up, yet they've used quite a lot of drones recently. I'm hoping that doesn't mean the Russians have become better at shooting the drones down. I'm hoping, as I proposed from Visioner, one of my sources this morning said that the Ukrainians may well be spending the last 2 or 3 nights sounding out the Russian air defenses ahead of a much larger set of attacks, which is what the Russians have done many times throughout the war, sending drones. And I talk about this. I don't understand why the Russians are sending the odd drone here and the odd drone there. But of course, you do understand what they're doing is they're working out where the Ukrainian air defenses are, so they can work out either what they need to destroy in certain locations in terms of air defenses. So they either destroy the air defenses or they evade the air defenses. So stay well away from them and take these safer routes through to the target. So hopefully the Ukrainians are either going to be striking at some of those air defense units explicitly, or more likely they're going to be avoiding them as they are preparing, hopefully, fingers crossed, this could be hopium copium, but preparing for a massive set of strikes on Russia using the Liutyi drones that have been funded by the Germans. And that's probably a great segue. So thank you very much, Thomas, because that's a great segue into what we're going to talk about next, which is this. So Zelensky said this week, all available interceptor drones that are affected should be contracted. So that's the first bit, not pertinent to what we were just talking about, but any decent interceptor drone that has shown itself to work, you're going to be contracted. In other words, we need as many as we can get. So it doesn't matter who you are and where you're making them. What little, whether you're making 100 a day or 1 a day, you're going to get a contract, because we need as many of these bad boys as we can get, because the Russians are sending in an absolute F ton of Shahed drones. So that's the first thing. Then he says, people should see that Ukraine has its own missiles. There are already hundreds of agreements with partners on the supply of weapons, joint production, and investments. So on their own missiles, he says the Ukrainians must see our own missiles in action. Our goal is 50% domestically made weapons in the defense forces within 6 months. Drone strikes must increase in range and frequency. Every Russian arms site must be in reach. All defense deals must be audited and executed. But he's essentially said somewhere else that you should see missiles within a week. He's intimated that within a week there could well be evidence of Ukrainian indigenously manufactured weapons being missiles being used, and that is exactly what we've been waiting for far too long. Okay, here Robert Nosnik says, JP, another plan is to fly your Liutyi drones over the same path every night to lure the Russians into moving their surface-to-air missile systems to where you want them. So that could be another rationale in there as well. So fingers crossed, we are going to see what has been threatened for so long, which is, you know, whether it be the Krim 2 or whatever it be, long Neptune. Hopefully we'll see some Ukrainian missiles get used in the coming week or so. Now, and it could be why we've seen the activity of drones over the last 3 nights, is that it is leading up to a much larger attack on Russia. Now, Danish defense company Terma, one of the key suppliers of components for the F-35, has announced a collaboration with Ukrainian Odd Systems to create low-cost air defense system against drones using artificial intelligence. Terma is expected to provide the necessary sensors, and the Ukrainian side will develop drone interceptors and integrate the already battle-tested artificial intelligence architecture. That sounds really good, and I presume it's taking something like, I don't know, you might have, for example, a Wild Hornets interceptor drone that a Danish company can provide much better sensors, you know, real high-tech sensors for, so it can sense its targets and use AI to find those targets much more easily. So this is one for the Danes out there. Says this random Danish person, Terma is based in Lystrup on the northern outskirts of Aarhus. It has been around since 1949 and is one of the largest companies in the Danish defense sector. As a Jutlander, I am happy to see such positive news. So, one, to make the Danes happy. And we like to keep the Danes happy because the Danes, they're a good bunch. Right, Ukrainian, I love to be really condescending and patronizing. I'm actually being genuine. Ukrainian company unveils a new Darts twin-engine strike drone. So 2 engines, looks like a very small plane. A twin-engine variant of the drone capable of carrying a payload of over 12 kilograms. So that's a fairly decent payload. The last one we looked at was that 5-kilogram one, the German one, that looked like that had a 5-kilogram payload. It's much smaller. 12-kilogram can do a little bit more damage, one would think. Produced by the company Darts, is now being provided to Ukraine's army in small quantities, a company representative said on July the 18th. Let's make sure that Ukraine is able to use all of these wonderful toys that they're getting from abroad effectively. Right, we're going to go on to the Russian situation at the moment. According to the President Zelensky and European officials cited by Bloomberg, China has ceased exporting drone components to Ukraine and is now directing its supplies primarily to Russia. Chinese firms accounted for 92% of all foreign-sourced components in Russian attack drones. That is a very clear indication that the Chinese are definitely helping the Russians to a huge degree. Something needs to happen there in terms of stopping that, but I don't know what. It'd be interesting to see if the war is not sewn up in 50 days, whether Trump sticks to his word and hammers China for helping Ukraine. Chinese Russian groups, so again, more data to suggest the Chinese are really helping the Russians. The Chinese-Russian group PGI Technology has begun combining Kevlar. So Kevlar is what you might expect to see in a bulletproof vest. It's now being used to make optical fiber threads stronger. So it's being combined with the optical fibers to increase the strength of the thread and resistance to breakage in loops during fiber FPV flights. They claim the tensile strength has doubled from 50 newtons to 100 newtons of force required to break it. The ability to resist twisting has apparently also been significantly improved. This effectively prevents the formation of loops with a diameter of less than 7 millimeters, and practically eliminates optical fiber breakage due to internal stress caused by twisting during unwinding. This is a case of the Russians adapting, improving, and probably staying ahead of the curve when it comes to Ukraine. There's an asymmetry there. The Russians developed fiber optic drones before the Ukrainians did. The Ukrainians, I think, have always been playing catch up to some degree with regard to these drones. And it's a shame that yet again, they are ahead of the Ukrainians, I would assume, there. Okay, that brings us to the end of the data I have. There might be some more stuff coming out with regard to Ramstein, because it kind of emerges quite continuously. Let's just have a look. But if you have any questions that are kind of Q&A ending to the video, please get your questions in. That would be fabulous. What else? No. There was worth letting you know that the Ukrainians are attacking again with drones right now, I believe, in the daytime, rather like the last couple of days. And I was reading, here it is, actually, I'll show it to you. A new massive wave of Ukrainian kamikaze drones is currently attacking Russian territory. This was 2.5 hours ago. Targeting Tula, Kaluga, Tver, and Moscow regions. Loud explosions will be heard in several cities, and Russian air defense systems are active. So the Ukrainians, it does seem like they're doing something. Like, they wouldn't usually be sending their drones across at this time of day, I don't think. So there's something's going on for sure. So new Ukrainian Minister of Defense Denis Shmyhal, so the former prime minister, has called on the US to make Patriot and PAC-3 missiles available for purchase and urge European partners to provide the necessary funding. I mean, I presume that's what we've been talking about for weeks, so I don't know what's particularly new here. His appeal came during the latest UDCG meeting. So maybe there's not enough focus on getting. I thought that's been pretty much the entire focus of recent times: PAC-3 interceptors and launchers. Zelensky said he's had a very meaningful meeting on the development, production, and procurement of drones. We analyze all areas of the necessary drones with a special emphasis on interceptors. We will contract as much as possible. So that's just a bit more meat to the bones, what I was saying earlier. We're also working on scaling up our deep strikes. I presume that is the Ukrainian deep strikes on Russia. And I think that's what you are seeing at the moment. So interesting. That definitely needs to happen. The Russians, if they are sending 500 drones a night, or can, then the Ukrainians need to be able to do that. They absolutely do. French companies have decided to begin drone production in Ukraine. So Zelensky, that's again reference to what I mentioned earlier, but this is all stuff to do with scaling up drone production so that the drones can be used to the same degree that they are by the Russians. Now, what's interesting here is that if you're doing, I mean, you need to do this anyway, but if you are seriously, so I wonder about this all the time. Like, when you hear like Trump saying, right, you've got 50 days to come to a peace deal, like, do either side actually think that that's going to happen? Does anyone, like, are they completely dismissive of this? Like, would Zelensky go, well, that's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So we are going to plan. I mean, I know you should plan anyway for the contingency that it wouldn't happen, because that'd be insane not to. But there's one thing to say, well, you know, we'll plan for this, even though, you know, we're hopeful it will happen. Or do they just go, it just is not going to happen? Like, no one believes that there's going to be peace within 50 days. So we are going to plan on scaling up investing loads in massive drone production, so that we can do to Russia what Russia are doing to us. And we're going to get together with the French, and we're going to get together with the Germans, and we're going to get, make sure that this happens. I mean, I presume everyone is just prima facie dismissive of a potential peace. The reality of a peace is not really going to happen, unless you think it is. I mean, put it in the live thread now. What percentage chance do you think there is of there being, like, genuinely? No, just don't just dismiss it out of hand or whatever. But what do you think the percentage chance of there being a peace deal before the 50 days is up, before September the 2nd? I'll be interested to see what you think. And I should probably do that as Benny, if you're listening, can you do that as a poll? Maybe put some, if you put a poll and put some ranges on there, that'd be really cool. But I don't know if you're still listening. Okay. Yeah, we've heard about this. The UK is just putting a dollar value instead of, we heard it in pounds earlier. UK Ministry of Defence it's confirmed it's delivered $201 million worth of air defense missiles and artillery shells over the past 2 months, and that's part of a $914 million commitment this year. So yeah, all of what we've already heard. Yeah, I don't think there is anything else that needs to be said at the moment. Everything else I think I've covered. Right, Benny Pie is indeed doing that poll. He's a clever lad, and he's an awesome human being. Right, so back to you guys. Sorry, I was looking at too many screens here. 0.1%. That's zero. Yeah, this doesn't look like anyone's particularly yeah, positive in terms of thinking that's going to happen. Who said something about helicopters? So helicopters are better for anti-drone. So this is Gary Greger. Thing about helicopters, they are really good for shooting down Shahed drones. They've done a really good job. You can shoot them down. You can follow the drones and shoot them down where you think they're going to fall in a safer area. But the problem is they don't cover enough airspace, helicopters. This is what was said. There was a bit of an analysis I did sometime back when there was another video of one of these helicopter shoot downs coming out. And yeah, the idea is that, yeah, really good, but we need about another 50 helicopters to begin to make the difference. And when you've got that many drones as well, it just, you need a suite of all sorts of different options. Also, you don't want to be shooting down your own helicopters with air defense. I always worry about stuff like that. But there you go. Okay, just seeing if there are any questions. Lots of people talking about Stephen Colbert. I know that's not to do with today's topics, but I have an awful lot to say on that, which I said much of it in my my video the other day on the attack on the media. So please go and check that out. It's a really important video about the frivolous court cases that Trump has raised against Disney and Paramount, and now I think Murdoch's News Corp, that he would not have a snowball's chance in hell of winning, but it allows those companies to pay him money because they settle out of court, even though they would win that court case. It's just, this is how Trump gets money, and they get on the right side of Trump. So it's just it's a way of kind of bribing Trump, really. So I know is the answer to this. So as far as I understand, they are just kind of better versions of the FPV drones we see intercepting larger reconnaissance drones, right? So they, in fact, if I can find the Wild Hornets interceptor drone. Wild Hornets is a company that's a non-profit organization that makes loads of drones in Ukraine, and they are making interceptors at the moment as well. Poland announces the largest ever oil discovery on Polish territory. There you go. There's some news for you. So Wild Hornets, and they essentially, as far as I understand it, come at the drones from behind again, and so they need to go faster than the drones, and they take the Shaheeds out like they would normally take out reconnaissance drones. So May the 26th, kamikaze drone mid-air. No. Interestingly, if you look at Wild Hornets, they have developed a drone that can go 11 kilometers up in the air. It's just absolutely incredible, right up into the outer reaches of the atmosphere there, by the looks of it. And yeah, that's a bit of a skill. Okay, so what do we have here? Successful testing of the new modification of the fastest Interceptor Sting. The new versions of our fastest drones can now fly twice as long while maintaining their speed. We won't reveal the technical specifications, but there are hints in the video. Pay attention to the drone speed, numbers on the bottom left, altitude, numbers in the center, and throttle percentage, values on the right. For example, at 50% throttle, the drone reached speed of 200 kilometers per hour at an altitude of 1,046 meters. So this looks like one of the Interceptor drones going at quite a rate there. And I guess they just somehow hunt down. I don't know how they lock on and whatnot. There are these. These are the ones. This is what I was looking for. These look like the Wild Hornet Interceptor drones that they're making, these green ones. And you see a number of these that seem to be vertical takeoff drones. That's, yeah. But I just presume that they take off and hunt down the drones and take them from behind or something, he said with a smile on his face. Yeah, so I showed you a video of some other Interceptor drones the other day. It was the Odin Interceptor drone. So Odin Interceptor drone. It's called the Win. What is it? No, help if I could spell. Yeah, these ones. The Win Hit drones. So they are vertical takeoff drones. There's a video of them somewhere. Again, there's a Wild Hornet drones there. Here it is. So let's show you that video. That's really loud in my ears, but you can't hear it at all. So start it from the beginning. You can see there it is. And then seems to have quite a pace, but of course it needs to in order to catch up with those Shahid drones. I don't think it's going to intercept it like exploding the front of it. I think it'll find the target and then attack it from behind. And I doubt these are going to be able to take out the jet drones, and that's going to be a bit of an issue for the Ukrainians, because suddenly, you're having to deal with not just going a couple of 100 kilometers an hour, but 700 kilometers an hour. And that's rather different. So anyway, there you go. That's a couple of Interceptor drones, but I don't know the full specs and how they work and whatnot. I'm sure there are many clever people in the threads that are able to do that. And there is a poll at the moment, which means I presume I'm going to have to look at this on my actual video live. Here we go. There you go. Hopefully you have information as is necessary, and you found that interesting and informative. We're going to sort of bring this to a meandering conclusion. Scruffy Tales, good to have you. I was listening to your video this morning, Scruffy. The one about you're looking at history legends video saying, pro-Russian video saying that it's all sort of collapsing, but rather than collapsing, this is an organized withdrawal of the Ukrainian forces around Pokrovsk. But they are, the Russians are advancing pretty much everywhere on the front line at the moment. It is not looking good for the Ukrainians, and that would lead us to conclude that yes, the Russians are on their summer offensive. This is the summer offensive, and it is happening. But I didn't read what you said. So a slow Interceptor can engage from the front, not catch up. Swedish fighters got a lock on the Blackbird by engaging from the front in the 80s. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm just speculating. I'm sure there are probably many ways that they can operate. Paul Gilbert says, actually, there's too many people commenting about drone interception, but that's why you're such a wonderful community. Such interesting opinions and whatnot. just trying to see how 79% of people say 0% chance. That's what I can read. Is that right? I don't know that I can. Let's have a look at this. Yeah, so we have the chance of a peace deal within 50 days, 0%, 0%, 78%. Now, 1 to 20%, 20% of people think that. 21 to 50%, 1%, and 51% and above, 1%. People are not very confident that there will be a peace deal within 50 days. The vast majority see it as there being a 0% chance. I think it's going to be, I would 0%. I'd say 1 to 20. I'd say 1 to 20%. But that's a pretty big range, right? But there you go. And just a few more thank yous for you guys. I'm going to say thank you to Johnny Nevregard, who has spread some Norwegian love again. Thank you. Super cool. Really appreciate that. Now, Julian, I have something to say on this. And indeed, I have it ready for my... I was wondering whether I should do just my geopolitics video with you now, but I've already been talking an hour. But I have that ready for my geopolitics video, and it is important. This is really important. So what does Julian say? Azerbaijan came out very strongly in support of Ukraine today, actually yesterday and the last couple of days, really. Be nice if they sent some kit to help. Doubt Russia has enough in the tank to pick up a scrap with another country right now. You know how cool I am. Like, I go to bed thinking about, like, how many mirages can France give to Ukraine, and I just have, and I play out a bit like a computer game, these scenarios in my head, and then fall asleep to that. And every night I go through this ritual of doing the same thing of like, oh, what equipment would I get there today if I had like godlike abilities. But I was thinking about Azerbaijan and Armenia last night, because honestly, that is how cool I am. Going to sleep thinking about Azerbaijan and Armenia, and just thinking, what would it take for them to like get together, put their grievances aside, and go, let's really screw around with Russia and cause some issues on the Russian border, and then cause Russia to be fighting on two fronts. But certainly, this is going to be helping Ukraine. Azerbaijan, over the last, as I reported this morning, 24 hours, Russia has accused Azerbaijan of helping Ukraine to carry out Operation Spiderweb. So it was with the diaspora communities in Russia of Azerbaijanis that the Ukrainians were able to get people to help out with the delivery of these containers with all the drones into the different airfields. And, you know, Azerbaijan had been implicated by Russian propagandists on television, whilst at the same time, Azerbaijan have arrested a couple of people fighting for Wagner, Azerbaijanis, that it's illegal to be mercenaries fighting on behalf of Russia. There have been these arrests of these diaspora community bigwigs in Russia by the Russian authorities. That's really annoyed the Azerbaijanis. The Azerbaijanis arrested some FSB agents still working for Sputnik, the propaganda TV network that was still not quite functional, but somewhat functional in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. So you've got all this tit for tat going on. And then the Azerbaijani president said yesterday, I believe, something along the lines of, Crimea is Ukraine, and we stand by you. Or I'll try and find actually exactly what he said, because I have that ready here. That's how sad I am. Just information all over the shop. So let's talk a little bit about this, because I think it is super important. So if we stop showing that, we stop there, and then we show this. Let's talk a little bit about Azerbaijan. Thank you, Julian, for this, by the way. Okay, sharing that. I'm going to remove Julian's comments. So Russian propagandists have accused Azerbaijan of assisting Ukraine in preparing the SBU's web operation, Spiderweb operation, seemingly to justify Russia's failure to protect its strategic aviation and ongoing repression of Azerbaijani citizens inside the country. We have Azerbaijan arrests Wagner mercenaries. Azerbaijan has arrested its own citizens who joined Wagner after being prosecuted and imprisoned in Russia. They have been charged with waging terrorist warfare inside Ukraine. President Aliyev earlier this month refused to meet a high-ranking Russian delegation and sent them home. Azerbaijan has clearly decided that it no longer wants any Russian influence in the region. Turkey, Armenia, and Azerbaijan have agreed a major transport link to Baku, and in turn are working with the stand states to pipe oil and gas as well as the Caspian Sea routes. So remember, this all really started going wrong for Russia with regard to Azerbaijan when they shot down the Azerbaijani airplane over Grozny and killed a bunch of, was it 38 or something, Azerbaijanis, and they've demanded an apology from Russia. Russia haven't given an apology. There have been leaked audios to show that it was actually shot down by the Russian air defense. There was a letter written by the commander of the air defense unit there to also validate that. So the Russians did it. It's the Russians what did it. Azerbaijanis know it. The Russians are pleading, like, well, they're not pleading anything. They're just staying silent about it. And the Azerbaijanis have got really, really pissed off. And then that has morphed into the current kind of tit for tat that we are seeing. And then we have Sean Pinner saying, this is big. Azerbaijan, a former Soviet republic, has declared Crimea and other occupied territories as Ukrainian. Russia's imperial dreams are cracking. Look who's already resisting. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Poland, Czech Republic, and Germany. All formerly occupied by the Soviet Union, just to name a few. Ask yourself, why now? So, and then you've got Turkey, as mentioned, Turkey together with Armenia and Azerbaijan looking to create an alternative supply to maybe Kazakhstan oil coming through to the Caspian Sea, and, you know, so on and so forth. This then providing an alternative to Russian oil. And here we have the president saying, never agree to occupation, never surrender. And this was the message Azerbaijani president addressed to the Ukrainian people. It was also announced today, being yesterday, or 2 days ago actually, that Azerbaijan is preparing documents to appeal to international judicial bodies against Russia regarding the downing of that Azal passenger aircraft. And here, the neighbors are sick of Russia, says Jay in Kiev, along with announcing a lawsuit against Russia for shooting down the Azeri commercial airliner on Christmas Day. The president of Azerbaijan advised Ukrainians to never agree to occupation. Never agree to occupation. This is my advice. This is what we did. Indeed, it's always easier to keep the Russians out than to get them out once they are in. That's a pretty solid point there from Jay in Kiev. So anyway, thank you, Julian, for that sidebar. I think, you know, the more problems Russia has, whether it be economically or politically, then the more distracted they become and the more difficult it is for them to deal with Ukraine. So you need a game of political whack-a-mole. It'd be great if those in Georgia, in fact, let's go back to, we are doing a bit of my geopolitics video, aren't we, here? So I've been worried about Georgia of late because I haven't heard much about it, but apparently they are still doing what they do. For the 233rd consecutive day, Rustaveli Avenue has been blocked. Protests continue in 8+ cities. The illegitimate repressive Georgian dream regime must collapse, says Rusudan Jakeli. Keep an eye on us for a big rally tomorrow. This was said on the 18th, so it's a few days ago. And it is still going on. Now, this needs to have a significant effect. I don't know if the government have got used to it. Like, how can they enforce a change somehow there? I mean, with Euromaidan, violence is where it went. Not that the protesters were the ones that started the violence, but that kind of led to precipitously to the end of the Yanukovych government, really. So the crowd in Georgia's capital, and this was on the 19th, so this was the day after, Tbilisi, on the 234th daily nationwide protest, we're chanting, quote, until the end, meaning until the repressive, illegitimate pro-Russian GD regime collapses, says that same source. So yeah, you've got Georgia, you've got Armenia, you've got Azerbaijan, you've got Moldova as well. In fact, let's go to Moldova. Actually, sorry, I am going off on one, but this is what you're here for. Right, so we can go next to Moldova. No, I want to go there next. Yeah, here. So Moldova cuts off the Russian hydra's head, says Nexter. Moldova's Central Election Commission has barred the pro-Russian bloc Victory from participating in the upcoming elections. The bloc is led by fugitive oligarch and fraudster Ilan Shor. So we've mentioned Ilan Shor a number of times. Bad guy who lives in Russia and has been trying to manipulate his way into power to bring the Russian world to Moldova. The commission cited multiple violations of election laws, including undeclared campaign expenses, such as trips by bloc members to Moscow. And then you have it all going a little bit wrong for Hungary, although they're trying to fight their way to supporting Russia even more. Like Orban is definitely doubling down. So he slams the EU budget proposal, claiming that up to 25% could go to Ukraine, a quote, a non-member. He warns this makes Ukraine's economy Europe's problem for decades, citing a recent case of forced conscription. He calls on Brussels to sanction Ukrainian commanders, saying the EU turns a blind eye to abuses. It's really doubling down on support for Russia. Orban says he hopes that the V4, the Visegrad 4, so that's Czechia, Hungary, Slovakia and Poland, will be revived in a year, meaning he's banking on Andrej Babis winning in Czechia and the Polish government falling so his Liberal alliance can get back together. Meanwhile, polls show Orban will be voted out in 9 months. This is pretty interesting, right? Because you have several things going on at the same time. You have Czechia looking like they're going to adopt a right-wing populist government, and you've got that in Slovakia as well, but they're not popular. And you've got Viktor Orban with a right-wing populist government, but they're not popular. And you've got Poland with, at the moment, the ruling coalition, which is pro-EU, but the Law and Justice Party is significantly popular enough. My sense of what's going on in Europe is as soon as you get a right-wing populist government, as long as the elections stay free, hopefully they get rejected at the next election. So hopefully Slovakia's government would get elected. It's taken a long time for Fidesz to get, for people to realize exactly who they are. But that's what happens when you are able to start controlling the judiciary and the media. So you can then manipulate your electorate so that you can stave off them realizing that you're just corrupt. And, you end up being in power for much longer. That's what Viktor Orban did. But these are right-wing. It's not like the right-wing's prima facie bad, but you get right-wing further to the right populists, and it's the populist part. It's like, yeah, we're going to solve all your problems with this simple solution, and simple solution is let's get rid of every single person that's not in our in-group, whether you're an immigrant or you're gay or you're a woman, or we're just going to make life much more difficult, and so on and so forth. And it's that kind of populism that is, I think, really dangerous and also not very good for the economy either. Like the more kind of liberal and rules based you are, like liberal in the sense of freedom and support for all different communities, but also strongly rules based. There's lots of analysis I've been hearing recently about how like this is happening in the United States. As soon as you start kind of breaking the rules, actually, like corporations like rules, like, yeah, they like to bend them themselves and break them when they make money, but actually the reliability of a rules-based system is what you need in order to really have a decent functioning economy. Where the rules are the worst in the world, you have the worst economies. Like, look at Afghanistan and look at some of these like really problematic countries where you have the most peace and the greatest set of adhered to rules, you will have the better functioning economies. And so when you get these kind of grifting populist rulers who are lining their own pockets and breaking the rules and changing the judiciaries for their own benefit, you have, so Hungary is a great example. It's one of the worst functioning economies, and it's the most corrupt nation in the EU because he's grifting. So I think what happens is you get these, and I don't want to be too anti-reform, but it's hard not to be. So Nigel Farage was just interviewed the other day on by Laura Kunsberg on the BBC, and it was fascinating because he didn't have an answer for loads of difficult questions concerning these councils where the reform candidates and reform councillors are now in charge, right? Because they've won a majority of seats on these councils, but they're absolutely screwing everything up. They're trying to pay themselves, give themselves a 600% pay increase in one of the councils. You like for the mayor, and it's like you've just gone complete grift already. And other places, they're not turning up to meetings, they're not functioning. It's like they're not serious. So so I find with populist governments, or populist political parties, they're so hell-bent on one particular idea. Say take immigration. I'm not saying immigration isn't a problem, but if that's all you stand for, then you're not a person that's interested in serious governance, right? If like I'm only interested in immigration, then I get voted in to be representing my constituency in a country where I have to think about healthcare and pensions and defense and foreign policy and education, and suddenly I'm like, well, I only cared about immigration. I don't know about all of this stuff, and I don't really care about all of this stuff. You're not a serious politician. You're not serious at governing. That's what's happened with reform. So they are being found out certainly at the local level, and loads of them have now quit, and then they're having to run expensive by-elections, and like, so you've come in, you're trying to do Doge and cut all the costs, but now a load of you have quit. That's costing the council more to run these by-elections, and you're trying to pay yourself more, and you don't know what you're doing here, and you don't know what you're doing over there. You're just not serious. That's what you see, I think, with, say, Fidesz, except they get away with maintaining power precisely because they control the judiciary and control the media. But in places where they fail to get that grasp, then hopefully those parties get rejected quite quickly. So you swing from the kind of, in this case, right-wing populism. I say right-wing populism because immigration is the prevailing issue for so many people in Europe, that it's always going to be the right-wing populists that I think are going to have more purchase than the left-wing populists. And that's why I'm always moaning about right-wing populists supporting Ukraine more, because the left-wing populists who might support, Russia more, the left-wing populists who might support Russia just don't get into power because there's not enough desire for them to be in power, and yet because of immigration there is that desire for the right-wing populists to get in. So they are more of a challenge than left-wing populism in terms of being anti-establishment and trying to burn things up. So I think both forms of populism will want to try and break things down to kind of start again. We're going to burn it all down, it's all corrupt, all these elites, and of course you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and you end up destroying government rather than trying to build up to something that's robust and sustainable and good for all. So I'm having a massive rant here, but so yeah, anyway, so going back to this idea that Viktor Orban is saying, is interesting that, yeah, he can bank probably on Czechia going his way, but then in Hungary he's being rejected, so you're likely to get an anti-populist movement going on there. It might end up being a populist movement, but just anti his kind of populism. Slovakia, I think you'll get reaction against Smer and a coalition of Robert Fico, and in Poland you've got a bit of both going on there. So yeah, I would worry about the V4 getting together and aligning themselves with a kind of pro-Russian point of view, but I think it's a little bit more complex than that. And then here's an example of how it's not going Viktor Orban's way, particularly at the moment. Hungarian diplomat Mihaly András-Becker, who served Orban's government in Romania until recently, tore up his Fidesz party membership card on camera, breaking with the regime in a symbolic move. He said Orban's support for Romania's far-right leader, George Simeon, was the last straw. So Romania luckily came through, and they have rejected right-wing populism, but it is still there. It's still an issue, but that the fact that Orban supported George Simeon was just too much for this Hungarian diplomat. But you know, he's 15% down in the polls at the moment, Orban, and he's got a choice. Does he double down on pro-Russia and his present situation, positions on everything, knowing that it's actually pretty unpopular now? Or does he change his position and try and react to that growing discontent with his regime? And he's going the former, not the latter route, which means he's just going to double down on his support for Russia and his anti-Ukrainian stance, and hope that he can, I presume he's going to hope that he can rig the elections enough that he doesn't get unseated, which is why there are some people, there's petitions going around in Hungary to call for there to be EU election observers in an EU nation. I mean, usually they'd be sending election observers to, I don't know, somewhere in Africa, somewhere in East Asia or something like that. But no, sending election observers to one of their own countries is pretty concerning, but something that's probably going to have to happen, because I think, you know, he will seek to rig the whole lot. So that was quite a long sidebar. Thanks, Tom, for gifting 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thanks, Julian Rossler, for that impetus for getting me to have a long rant or just a long stream of consciousness waffle. No, thanks, Tom. Really appreciate that. I have not kept a single eye on, not a single one of my 4 eyes on the live thread. Yeah. Well, yeah. So this idea that actually left-wing populism is generally, I think, just more positive by point of fact that it's trying, usually, if it depends, if you see someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Zoran Mamdani as left-wing populists, I would see them as like broadly centrist, normal politicians in European state of affairs, whereby, yeah, we, you know, free school lunches for school kids. Yeah, that's not crazy. Rather than like we're going to just snatch people off the streets and send them to gulags in El Salvador. You know, it's like, so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's really, yeah. Anyway, that's my opinion. So thank you very much for listening to my waffling. I appreciate that. Take care, and I will speak to you soon. I'm probably going to wrap it up now. This won't be one of my long goodbyes, because no one's at the moment given me the reason to bang on anymore with a last minute, oh, JP, what do you think about this? And that doesn't mean you can, by the way. I'm not giving you permission to do that. Prediction for Czechia, though, although having said that, Rob, prediction for Czechia: Babis gets in as the opposition is not marketing and lacks of funds. It's obvious over the entire country. He's not complete far right pro Russia, but he is bad news. I would agree that. Is that Rob from Bristol? Is that Rob that came to my talk in Stockbridge in Hampshire? If it is Rob, let me know, because I think Rob's other half is from Czechoslovakia, as was, if I'm correct. Yes, it is. That's awesome. So yeah, this is worth a long goodbye, actually. So Rob, prediction for, so he knows, he's got his eye on the ball a little bit. His other half visits there and gets a sense of what's going on. Babis is from the ANO party, and they are at the moment easily ahead in the polls. But in order, because in Europe it's not sort of first past the post, generally you're going to have to go into coalition with other parties. If they're going to struggle to get coalition partners with some of the mainstream, more centrist parties, then as a right-wing populist party, but kind of centre-right populist party, he is likely to then get into bed with the far-right coalition, which the last time I looked had about 13% amongst 3 or 4 parties in that coalition. Now, they are deeply anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia, but the centre-right party ANO that Babis is in is more not wholly behind Ukraine, but not as bad as the far right, and probably would get a situation where they would want Czechia to still do the Czech initiative. Once you get in and realize how much money is swilling around with support for Ukraine, and I'm not trying to say this is all about grift, but it's just like, if you are going to take the Czech initiative and you are going to be in charge of that, and you are going to take money in, you're organizing that so that your companies like Excalibur and all these other Czech companies can get contracts to, for example, look at all the shells that are coming in from all around the world to make sure that when they go to Ukraine, they are serviceable, that, you know, they're operable. And you need to give contracts to Czech businesses to do that. So, you know, supporting Ukraine is arguably going to support your own industry more than not supporting Ukraine. And that's why I often talk about, helping Ukraine in a way that stimulates your own industry is kind of what's most preferable for most countries, rather than taking your taxpayer money and then giving that to Ukraine. You provide stuff that stimulates your own economy. Anyway, I wonder whether you would get in and go, well, you might be full of the whole rhetoric of like, yeah, screw Ukraine, we're helping them too much, we're doing it. And you actually get in, you're like, nah. It's a bit like what's happening in Serbia, right? So, and indeed Slovakia, where Slovakian companies are still providing assistance for Ukraine because they're not going to turn down contracts. And Robert Fico can say what he likes over here, but he knows that over here that really there's employment and there's tax dollars and whatnot. Serbia as well. So Russia have been complaining about Serbia providing all sorts of stuff for Ukraine, and then Serbia have had to deal with Russia having to go at them from over there with a need to sustain some of their industries in helping Ukraine. And that's going to be, I guess, a challenge for the ANO government if it comes in and wants to put a stop on helping Ukraine to some degree. But it's basically, it won't be the worst situation with ANO in charge. Depends who they're in coalition with, but it's worse than certainly they are at present. That's my interpretation, Rob. Hopefully that's a fair analysis. And yes, I am still talking, and Rob, you just did that to me. Rob says, we were there a lot this last month. One advert for the opposition I saw, many for Babis, and some for the Pirate Party. The Pirate Party is a left-wing populist party. So that'd be the opposite end of the spectrum, but from the other side. And I wouldn't have thought the Pirate Party would be anti-Ukraine. Some left-wing populist parties are, like Sarah Wagenknecht's party in the BSW in Germany is kind of anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia, but I don't think the Pirate Party is. But anyway, I might be wrong. Yes, I don't know if, but thank you, Rob, and thank you for coming to that talk that I gave all that time ago. Really, really appreciated it and love meeting you. Pablo Non-Picasso says, Poland has oil and wind power being developed in the Baltic, and they are looking very closely at security around Kaliningrad and Ukraine in general. I work with some security people there myself. Interesting, Pablo. And as part of my geopolitics video, I have a section on renewables because there is some consternation that there's quite a bit of money swirling around for investment in Ukrainian energy, in the energy sector. And they've got this commitment for renewables and also decentralizing the energy sector, like I've talked about so much before. I think it's beneficial for Ukraine to have solar and wind from a security point of view, and it's harder to destroy lots of smaller energy generation than one big thermal power plant or something. Anyway, there's an interesting Euromaidan article out about that, which is, they've got really good potential for renewables. They've got the desire, they had the investment previously, but then there's not joined up thinking, it's not transparent in terms of some of the monies that are coming in and some of the plans afoot. Anyway, more to talk on that later. Did you know that you can use Microsoft Bing reward points to donate to Chiga's Paul? No, I didn't. I don't even know what. I do know that they do reward, but I don't know what they use them for. I don't understand this. Choose Ukraine in find your cause country, then search Jigga. That's amazing. I thank you for that, because I use Edge, even though I much prefer Chrome, but Edge is good because it uses less computing power, and when you have so many things open, and also when I do my mapping, Chrome would make my laptop stall, my previous laptop. And that's why I started using Edge, because it was just less hungry. And actually it worked. The tab groups on Edge are better than on Chrome. You can slam them together, and you can't on Chrome. But generally, I much prefer searching on Chrome. But there you go. That's enough for me. I appreciate that feedback, though. I'll have to look into that. And also going back to the poll, I don't know if the poll is still open. No, I can't find it on the video, but I assume that most people think that Russia and Ukraine will not come to a satisfactory agreement in 50 days. So yeah, thank you. Here's my goodbye again. Oh, Scruffy Tails, should Kaliningrad be returned to Germany? There is interesting stuff going on with Kaliningrad, and they look like A, Russians were pulling out of Kaliningrad to some degree, and B, lots of people have been talking about, yeah, it just seems to be at the top of people's agendas quite a bit at the moment, Kaliningrad. Sorry, I had a decent thought in my head, but I was distracted by Smith's absolutely disgusting comment in a thread. So if there are any mods out there, you're gonna have to just ban this person forever. I mean, Smith, JP's Aussie accent is the worst though, but I forgive him. I mean, save maybe by the forgiveness there at the end, but I just can't. I can't believe they'd say that. It's just absolutely outrageous. I mean, it's not as if they're Australian or anything. They wouldn't know. Yes, I know Smith is Australian. Yes, I know. Right, Johnny Nedgard, only underground closed loop geothermal power is Putin proof and eco-friendly. Good point, Johnny. Yeah, I don't know how much geothermal power is available though in Ukraine. The Sulaki gap is important to maintain, and having Kaliningrad would be big. Yeah, I think I should do a little bit of thinking about Kaliningrad, do a bit of research on that, because that's probably a useful topic to talk about. Anyway, that really is enough for me. Take care, everybody. Really appreciate your support. I really do, and I'll keep you updated with more of what's going on and speak to you soon. I'll do a geopolitics video as well. Hopefully I won't try and repeat myself too much. Yeah, Benny Pie's talking to me lots in the thread just over here, telling me all about things that you guys are saying over there, and my brain is at the point of melting. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Slava Ukraini.